Hey everybody, welcome back to LED Live. We got a new look.
Hey,
you guys like this?
It's pretty nice.
I love it. Today, I'm excited to bring you this topic, but before we get into that, we want to remind you guys, you know what, for those that have supported us, check out our Patreon. Thank you for everyone that has jumped onto Patreon and supported us and afforded us the ability to be able to do this. I count it such a blessing, and you guys are part of our team as well. I also want to remind you, a lot of people call and ask about, like, where do we get your DVDs? And we make actual documentaries on a lot of topics that we cover. Things that we haven't put on our YouTube page. So you're welcome to check those out. You can get them on our website, littlelightstudios.tv, or check out our Vimeo. We got digital downloads. You can watch them there. And of course, don't forget, we sell t-shirts. Like what these guys are wearing right here. Yeah, this is one of the ways that you can help support our ministry. We have a passion for sharing the gospel with simple things like wearing a t-shirt and you know, putting a Christian theme on that. So check those out. They help us continue forward. So here's today's topic. Do you guys think video games are bad?
Absolutely not.
All right. We're gonna
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
There is actually a lot of research that has come out in the news that talks about there's some very positive things with video games. And so we're going to talk about that today because I think there's a lot of misinformation, and we're going to find out in this episode, are video games 100% bad? So who's controlling who? Have you guys played with these? Michelle, what is this?
A controller.
Okay, I'm just checking to make sure you guys know what this thing is. Have you ever played with one of these?
Yes.
Oh, many of them, yes.
Do you know that I have actually never played with this controller?
Wow.
Ever.
What do you use, joystick?
Not a game.
So
No.
was it PS3 too?
You know, Nintendo was pretty much my heyday in my video game expertise, and then I had a Sega Genesis for a tiny moment. But I never got into the video game world, and but we're gonna get into this. What do you think the average age is of video game players?
Average
37.
age.
I think.
20s?
20s?
Yeah, like
Oh,
13.
you're laughing.
to
I
20.
think I have a good educated guess.
Yes, actually, you are correct. This is from Statista, and their average highest demographic is 18 to 35, but actually 35 and above is the highest demographic that plays like the biggest chunk of video games. I found this pretty surprisingly too, that there's a lot of people, 21% of all video gamers are 50 years and older.
Wow.
I mean, that's a significant amount of people playing video games, right? So I want to share with you a little bit. There's a guy named Kazi Yakam. No, I'm going to totally butcher this. There's a guy named Kazunori Yamaguchi. I think I said that correctly.
No.
No. Okay.
Kazunori Yamauchi.
There you go. Yamauchi. All right. So this guy was one of the designers of a game called Gran Turismo. And when he came out with this game, he really wanted it to be literally like you were playing or like you were driving in a real race car. And this is somebody that's been through their Nissan training facility, and within a short amount of time actually went on and jumped into a real race car. Check this out.
I think my competitive spirit, yeah, it has come from my dad. My dad was a footballer, and he's always wanted me and my younger brother to be the best we can be. We're just a competitive family. I'd never experienced driving a sports car on a track before GT Academy. I mean, the fastest I'd been is probably 90 miles an hour on the motorway. The competition was open for 6 weeks at that time. So for 2 weeks solid, I was just pounding around this one track in this one car to get a top 20 time. The final race, there was 4 of us left. There was no real pressure because I was just loving every moment of the whole competition. I didn't want it to end. I'm the gamer kid, but I walk through the paddock and just knowing in myself that I can compete. Confidence, that's the biggest thing. You soon get to learn that if you're not confident in your ability, you're not going anywhere. I've been racing 5 years, and I'm I'm now at the stage where I feel I can compete at a very high level. Nobody remembers second place.
So I find this pretty amazing that you can literally play a video game and then jump into a race car and actually compete with real racers. You guys ever played any surgery video games?
Yes, I have.
Yeah?
I have.
You taking out a few hearts?
I don't remember. What I remember is like stitching people together, you know.
Did you kill the patient?
I don't remember. I think I did.
So they're starting to use video games in teaching and training in surgery because actually what it's doing is allowing the surgeons to try and test different things with obviously no risk to the patient. There's a lot of articles on the internet that talk about how the medical world is beginning to incorporate video games into their education system. Of course, they are actually even using robotics, and this article here is talking about how they're starting to actually build the controllers for the robotics in the same shape that people play video games.
Wow.
Reason being, the article says, is because people are so familiar with this
it, right?
already
Yeah.
that they can then go and do these crazy surgeries. But can you imagine, like, you know, if you're sitting at home and you become this amazing surgeon or something, you know?
And
If
you can do it
everything's done over the
remotely from
internet?
your bedroom or something like, oh, I'm
Right.
working on a heart right now.
Right? I mean, that's pretty wild. Here's what this article says. If we want to change the perception of healthcare past something that's old-fashioned and archaic, we should take the best technology in our field and use it to push the limits of what's possible in healthcare. For example, the multi-million-dollar Health Monarch surgical platform utilizes controllers that would not feel out of place than an Xbox or a PlayStation. Very interesting. This particular doctor here, I'm going to show you a clip here, where he's actually testing some students that he has that have some surgical experience. And then he's going to take some people who literally have had no surgical experience but just are really good at video games and put them at a task against each other and see which one will outperform the other one.
We wanted to see their results comparing to our physicians. And they did slightly better and pretty much the same, but slightly better than our physicians in training. And some of those physicians in training, they already participated in actual cases. And it tells me that this computer games helps a lot to transfer the knowledge and skills gained from the computer games, easy to implement into the robotic surgeries.
Anybody want to mention what he's playing?
I don't know what he's playing, but he's beating people up, I guess.
I mean, I don't know how that helps with surgery,
It's
really.
job
Like,
security.
you're literally like knocking the guy's teeth out so that you can like put them back in or something. I don't know. But I find it very interesting that this guy found that the people who had no surgical experience but just were really good at video games actually outperformed his people who had surgery experience. So that's kind of very interesting. What happens when you have a stroke?
You lose motor functions.
Part of your brain.
Why, though? Why do you lose motor functions?
I think part of your brain dies, doesn't it?
Part of your brain dies, right? So the brain is made up of electrical impulses that basically just go in a certain pathway, right? So your language, your motor skills, all those things are basically little electrical impulses that follow in that same path. But when part of the brain dies, what happens then? There's no longer that pathway there. So they found a really good way to retrain the brain is literally hand them some video games and they can remake those pathways inside of the brain. They also have found in the elderly that if they let them play video games, it actually can increase their lifespan, which I found was very interesting. You guys ever played Wii Tennis?
Yeah.
Right? You know, I think there is some really fun video games systems out there. Wii Tennis was kind of a neat thing because it really incorporates your body movement with it and stuff like that. So they gave this particular Nintendo device to some elderly people, and in just playing it for 2 hours a week, they were able to slow the decay of their mental decay and natural aging process, which I found was pretty interesting. Here's somebody that is actually had a stroke and they're having her play a little video game, and you guys can kind of see how this is kind of working out. So they have a big sort of screen in front of her, and they have like these butterflies that are coming, and she's supposed to like knock down the butterflies. And just by that action alone, that can help her retrain herself to walk. But this stroke patient is able to totally rehabilitate, and this is one of the better ways to do it. Why? Because video games are actually a really great teaching tool. This article right here in Medical Daily talked about a little game called Cut the Rope. So a game that you would think is just a waste of time. I mean, anybody got games on their phone?
I've cut the rope actually.
Yeah. Do you ever play games on your, like you're standing in line somewhere?
I used to play Angry Birds.
Yeah,
Angry Birds,
Asphalt,
yeah,
the
yeah.
car racing game.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why those little games are popular. I mean, people are standing around in a line and they play these little games, right? Well, this particular game called Cut the Rope, this article in Medical Daily was talking about it, and they found that people, after playing 20 hours of Cut the Rope, could concentrate and switch between tasks 60% better and 33% faster than those that didn't play it.
So
I
it's
found
just
that
like
pretty interesting.
training your motor skills or something, right?
Yeah, so it's like, you know, you think about it. Your brain is having to do an action. Your hands are having to do an action. It's hand-eye coordination. And, you know, you're thinking very fast and rapidly on what decisions you're going to make. And then you're having to, like, actually tell your hands to do those actions or whatever. So that's a skill-building process. And there's no doubt, I believe the medical world has you know, come across this information multiple times, that, yeah, there's positive things to training your brain in a quick manner.
Yeah.
The gaming institutions are now kind of like also starting to create content for the workplace. And what I mean by this is, like, there is a lot of jobs where they would actually, you know, train you with putting a video, sitting down, watching the video and trying to learn a skill and stuff, and people would just tune them out, especially everybody has phones now, and so it's like you're checking your internet, and, you know, I mean, the level of distraction that comes into the workplace now, today, is 10 times worse than I remember when I was a kid. And so to compensate for this, they found that a way to keep their attention and to also teach them whatever skill they're doing is to give them a little video game to play. And then they can incorporate whatever that company is trying to teach that person to do and make sure that they actually did it, because there's a score going on and all that kind of stuff.
Like flip the burgers.
Yeah, literally, right? So listen to this. In this article, it says the University of California Children's Hospital in San Francisco, gamification was used to prevent hospital-acquired infections. It was estimated that these cause up to 100,000 patient deaths in the United States each year. And to motivate nurses to be more careful and to take more careful measures when working with patients, the hospital implemented a gamification app to complete in the workplace.
What a time to be alive.
Right? You know what I mean? It's like, people are dying. Here, play this video game. You know what I mean?
But it's interesting, you know, there's 3 types of learners. There's the kinesthetic learners, you know, movement. There's auditory, people who like to listen, and then the visual. So incorporating this, something that's kinesthetic, that's movement, which is most of the population anyway, I can see how that's beneficial in the long run to more people.
That's right.
What's interesting to me, though, about that is years ago, this is the 1800s, I believe, they discovered is hand washing was the single most important thing that they found that they could do to help the spread of infection. And now we've gotten to the point where it's like, are we not as careful anymore? You know, we just, you know, everything's so clean.
Right?
Taking it for granted.
And yeah, we're taking it for granted, so now we have to gamify the thing and bring that back into the open.
Humans are funny.
I know, isn't
They
it?
are.
Isn't that
It's
funny though? But I
crazy.
mean, think about the level of where this potentially could go. I mean, what if your kids are like, I'm gonna go to a gaming school where I'm gonna just learn math and everything by just playing video games. Like my kids, they play on this app called Starfall. You ever heard of this thing? So it's basically a whole website that is kind of, for lack of a better term, games, and they teach you like math skills and word skills and stuff. And a lot of the public school systems have implemented this in, and if you go to school, they can give you a login, and the kids like literally sit there and they play games and they learn all sorts of words.
Like
My
we used to
son-
play number crunchers. Man.
Yeah, you know what I mean? We used to do what they call flash cards. You know what those are? Yeah, like you hold up a card. And now they just play video games, you know? I mean, it's pretty wild. So Science Daily, they talk about this use of video games in the workplace as well, teaching all these different skills. There's a lot of articles on the internet that talk about this. The military's used video game systems to basically train their military operates. And the military realizes that there's a lot of very dangerous situations that you just can't immediately put someone in. And if they've never disarmed a bomb before, you're not gonna like go sit them down in front of a bomb and be like, just make sure it's the red one. You know, it's like, they teach you very complicated situations and dangerous situations using simulation and VR. They've learned how to fly helicopters, I mean, very complicated things.
This is an actual simulator that you use to train with.
Dismounted soldier training, just one of the ways the US Army is developing the 21st century American warrior. It's a $57 million system, unveiled for the Army over the summer by a company called Intelligent Decisions. Soldiers train for real-life combat scenarios in a virtual space.
So you can go into this system and train on any kind of environment, urban, woodland, desert, depending on the needs of the leadership and what they want to train for.
Head, arm, and leg sensors detect your motion.
So whatever it's coded to be, whether it's coded to be a grenade or binoculars or whatever, so you hold it there, it activate, and you just make the motion of throwing the grenade, and then you'll throw a grenade.
The 15-pound backpack processes each action, sending soldiers' data out to a network so they can operate as a team.
One dead bad guy in the hallway.
Guys outside the village are armed too.
You're talking to each other, you're moving in real time, you're seeing what they do, they see what you do, just like you would in any other kind of virtual environment.
Although it seems like a video game, virtual missions can make live training more efficient, saving time and money.
They can run through it, and then if they say, oh, let's try that again, it's basically just a matter of a few clicks and you're reset. There's not moving everybody back into position. There's no repositioning of vehicles. There's no fueling up. Right there, you're saving money, time, fuel, ammunition.
So these guys here are talking a little bit about this relationship between the military and the video game industry. There's long been a relationship with the two, and the video game world actually gets a lot of funding for some of these video games from the military. So why would the military be interested in helping fund video games first off, and then being involved in it?
Recruitment.
Because it's a teaching tool.
Recruitment, and it's a teaching tool. Watch this video clip.
I would have to say, I mean, a lot of us are familiar with the relationship between Hollywood and the military-industrial complex, like known as the military entertainment complex. They often work together. They have this close relationship to push maybe certain perspectives or viewpoints on war. Can you tell us a little bit more about the relationship between the military-industrial complex and the gaming world? Why would the military want to spend time and resources on video game development?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting about the military entertainment complex in Hollywood is quite often it's actually concealed from the public. So in other words, you get a journalist, for example, and it often is journalists who expose these relationships, but it's unusual for the industry to celebrate them. Now, what's really fantastically interesting and quite different about the games industry is they normally seek to work with the military to make their games more authentic, and they actively celebrate that as part of the marketing campaign. So if you look, for example, at the Call of Duty games or the recent Medal of Honor rebooted franchise or Battlefield, all of those games, these massive series that are played by millions and millions of people every year, all of them are made with the active collaboration of military advisors and consultants. But also they're made with the tacit support of the military, for example, in the usage of technology. So you get to fly an attack helicopter, for example, drive around in a tank, and so on and so forth. And all of those things are, you know, that you're able to do that because the military acquiesces in you using their technologies in these games. So authenticity, which is crucial to the gaming industry, comes specifically out of those relationships. And that is quite different in terms of the way that it's publicly celebrated compared to the film industry, which, as I say, like in the superhero films, they're always made with the military, but seldom is that celebrated in quite the same way.
Because they're bringing the war right into your living room.
Right into your living room. I mean, can you imagine, like, when you're playing these video games, the military has advised them on all of the technical details of this. I mean, it is as if you are going to war, right? People come back from war messed up because they see these kind of things, right? Yeah. And we're kind of handing this technology to people going, hey, this is as close as it's going to get to like blowing people's heads off. Wow. Here you go, have fun, here's the keys. Like that to me is a little bit alarming, don't you think?
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword, you know, because it depends on what you're doing with it. Obviously, you know, the shooting people is probably not what you want to release to the general public, but you know, learning how to fly a plane or a helicopter or something like that, you could really further your skills towards a career or, you know, being very helpful. So definitely there's a how you use it aspect in all of that.
I agree. So the military is not shy about this relationship. They have lots of details on the internet. You can find out which video games have been funded by which military operations, and it's pretty alarming that some of the top video games have really had this symbiotic relationship. So I found it really interesting as I was kind of doing a little bit of research on this. They started actually having a decline in people wanting to sign up for the military, which is interesting because now, you know, we're putting so much of this out into the society. So the military got really smart. They said, hey, we need to entice people to come back to sign up to the military. So one of the greatest ways was to put these video game systems where there's a bunch of kids. And where's there a bunch of kids?
In the mall.
In the mall. Listen to this.
The world's most expensive video game. Millions of dollars to recreate the effect of shooting a machine gun from an army helicopter. There's even a wind effect. It's what they call an experience center. The latest recruiting tool for the U.S. military has been placed in the middle of a suburban shopping center in the city of Philadelphia. The target? Young people who may not be old enough to serve, but could begin to get a taste of the action.
We're in the main attraction of these new recruiting centers of the U.S. military. People who are 13 years or older can come and they get to ride a simulated Humvee and shoot simulated rifles, and they're given a mission. They can shoot at people who come to attack them, and they lose points if they kill civilians.
The ability to watch soldier profiles.
There are soldiers here to give the teenagers more information about Army life. But unlike normal recruiters, the salespeople are dressed like everyone else.
What we're doing is giving them a virtual glimpse of what some of the things soldiers might do. So we don't hide the fact that the military can be dangerous. You see that in the video games.
But some of the people we met expressed concern that these games might give teenagers the wrong impression about the realities of war.
I don't think younger people know the difference between dead and alive really right now. I think would be really cool to see here would be something saying like there's a difference between a game and real life.
So while you're off shopping in the mall and your teenage kid is running around by himself, this is potentially something that he could be exposed to.
I mean, 13 is insane, and they're completely desensitized. Like it's just like a daze over their face.
Right.
Wow. And it's interesting. If they shoot a civilian, they lose points?
Right.
They should be kicked out of the game.
Right,
like,
right. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like you just lose points, but nothing really bad's going to happen to you because you know you're just going to walk out this door at the end of the day anyway. Right. And I don't think there's much that we could do to really prepare, you know, the mind for, hey, that person just lost their life. You know what I mean? Like they could never continue forward past this moment, and you were the one that chose whether they lived or died.
Like if you killed a person, you have to go to like this virtual funeral and see his wife and kids weeping and stuff.
Yeah, you know, something like that would be crazy to like introduce and try to like, you know, show the reality of it. Yeah. So all of this killing that a lot of people are playing in video games, right? It's got to do something to the brain, right? So there was a guy he's written a couple of books on the art of killing, and he actually is really working with the military and working with the police because it's very difficult to take a very healthy individual, put a gun in their hand, and have them aim at somebody that they don't know. All of us have this block inside of us to not pull the trigger. And so in order to do this, they have to actually psychologically train these people to be able to do that, and they put safeties on it. So listen to this.
Whenever we turn on the news, we're bombarded with horrific stories. In fact, according to the FBI statistics, there were nearly 15,000 murders in 2015 alone. What is behind this? Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman is pointing the finger to video games. He's here to discuss his new book, Assassination Generation, Video Games, Aggression, and the Psychology of Killing. And I think this is a must-read for parents, especially parents of young children.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about your background a little bit.
Yeah.
Why such a personal project for you?
You know, I began studying the topic of killing. I wrote the book on killing. Marine Corps Commandant's required reading after 15 years of war. Army and Air Force recommended reading. And when I began to become aware of how we teach soldiers and cops to kill, how we have to condition them to be able to pull the trigger, to overcome the resistance, we realized that video games doing the same things to the kids.
You mentioned before the psychology of killing. What is that?
You know, there is a study of the dynamics of getting healthy people to pull the trigger.
Right.
And we have found, my book on killing translated to 8 languages, 500,000 copies sold now, same publisher. The book on killing outlines how we've got to be able to take soldiers and cops, make killing a conditioned response. It's B.F. Skinner, it's operant conditioning. And we know that. We have a science to it. We do it to adults. We do it very carefully. We put safeguards of discipline on it. But anybody who's been in the armed forces or law enforcement in the last 50 years, you don't shoot bullseye targets. You shoot a man-shaped silhouette, a photorealistic target. We go to the qualification range. We no longer shoot at bullseye targets. We shoot at pop-up targets. We hit the target drops. It's B.F. Skinner. It's straight-up operant conditioning. Right. And a frightened human being will do what he's conditioned to do, like a pilot in a flight simulator, like a child in a fire drill.
And that's exactly what a lot of these video games are doing.
If you want to check out some of our documentaries we've actually made 3 documentaries called the Controller Series. You can pick them up on our website, littlelightstudios.tv. And we got lots of other documentaries on all kinds of different subjects, from superheroes to cartoons and you name it. Come check out our work on littlelightstudios.tv. That helps support what we do as well. So you got a lot of these video games that are literally training kids in the same way that he's clearly trained the military and the police how to kill people. I mean, you think about it, you're running around shooting targets constantly. What is all that doing to our population?
Did you hear what he said? Like, in the situation where you're afraid, you're just going to react. You're going to do what you've been conditioning yourself to do all the time. Man, how will that affect just everyday life? You
That's
get
right.
Scared and then boom, you hurt someone? Is
That's
that your
right.
first response?
So video games are an amazing teaching tool. I mean, they can teach you how to race cars. They can teach you how to do surgery. They can retrain a person who's had a stroke and give them new motor skills, right? We've seen that there is some very clear-cut evidence that there's some positive things to it. But the question then remains, what are you playing as a video game? Does it matter then if you play something super like, you know, Wii tennis all the time? Like literally, is there a difference between that and you're literally playing GTA, running around shooting people, stealing cars, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, how can you say one type of game affects me but the other one doesn't?
Right, right. So listen to this. This is the top video games sold. What do you guys see here?
Sims are still big.
Sports and shooting.
Okay, sports are still big. Shooting's still big, right? FIFA, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty. I want to show you a little trend. In 2009, what do you guys see as the greatest chunk of the pie here?
Sports.
Sports games.
Sports games, right? 19.6% sports games. Okay, now look at this. Same study done 2013. What is the largest chunk now?
Action.
Action games, right? Action adventure. Look at the shooter games, okay? Now I'm gonna go back and I'll show you back in 2009, shooter games were 12%, okay? A few years later, 4 years later, 20%, okay? Now I wanna show you 2016, what do you see?
Another jump.
Another huge jump in shooters. So their first-person shooters are literally a biggest chunk of the pie of what everybody's playing. And of course, on that list that we saw, what's one of the most popular games this last year that everybody's playing?
Fortnite.
Fortnite, right? I mean, we've made a video on Fortnite. The purpose of Fortnite is?
To be the last man standing.
The last man standing, to literally run around, shoot and kill everybody, and be the last one, and dance over their floss.
Oh no.
Over their dead body. Right? Look at this. Psalms 11:5 says, "The Lord tests the righteous, but the wicked and the one who loves violence, his soul hates." You know, have you ever thought of that? Literally, God hates something. You know, that's a harsh thing, because we in the Christian world, we teach so much that God is love, right? The very definition of love. The whole thing is about love. But there's actually something that God hates. He hates violence. Why do you think he hates violence?
It's pain, not love.
It conflicts with the love, exactly.
It's opposite of love, right? But when you're violent and you kill somebody, what happens?
You took away one of his children.
Can somebody choose God after that point?
No.
No. What if they weren't ready to die? That's why I believe God hates it, is because you're literally passing judgment upon people immediately, and their choice is made at that point. Whichever side of the fence they stand on, it's made. So I think that's why.
It's not just those people who commit it, but those who love it as well. Those who love violence.
Right. Good point.
Wow.
That it's not just the people who do the violence, but the people that love the violence. Like, I want to dance over, you know.
Yeah. So whenever I'm out speaking, I ask my audiences a couple things, like, as a Christian, should we love something that God hates? You know?
Interesting.
Is that, I mean, take that in consideration. If God says, I hate this, shouldn't you be on the same page as God?
Good point.
Yeah, if he says he hates violence and the video game says rated mature for violence, it's basically telling you, this is something God hates.
This is correct.
The other thing I ask them is, like, with games like Fortnite or Call of Duty or whatever, the objective is to kill, you know, this evil bad guy who's basically faceless, nameless. You don't know who they are. They don't mean anything to you. But if you were to change that character into somebody you knew, or maybe I ask him, what if it's just a bunch of little kids? Objective is the exact same. All you've done is change the skin of the character, and it's a bunch of little kids, and your goal is to now be the last man standing. Does that bother you?
Okay.
Does it make a difference?
You are hitting the nail on the head. Have you guys ever heard of a video game called Bioshock?
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
No.
They literally run around, and the purpose is to kill Christians.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Seriously.
To make it look like
I'm
it's
not
a cult
kidding.
leader or something, but he's quoting scripture and everything.
And they're singing like little kids, like songs that you would sing in like church or something like this. Yeah, Jesus loves me. Boom. And it's like, oh, there's a Christian. Boom. I mean, it's pretty nuts. So
that's crazy.
You're right. If you actually changed the skin and it was like all just women and children, would that change the game? If it was literally your own family and their faces were on there, would that change the game?
I would hope so.
Are we
I
not?
would hope so, yeah.
Are we all not one family? Right?
We know in the last days there's going to come persecution against Christians. Is this like a simulation training, preparing people to accept that?
Right.
Now let's discuss whether there is any link between violence on the screen and real violence with Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire, and retired Army Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman, who's authored books on the psychology of violence. Army Ranger, black belt, and everything. Okay, you win just on that score. It's great to have you both on. Let's start with you, David, because some of these games are really wild. I mean, they're pretty graphic, pretty gory. You know them, you know, Call of Duty. I don't do any of these, but
like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, they're simulated violence.
It's a criminal simulator, a murder simulator.
Yeah, Evan Ramsey, others like you know, some of these other killers, Dylan Klebold, Eric Harris of Columbine, were steeped in these games. Adam Lanza.
The Norway killer trained on those. He said he trained on them. 69 dead on an island in Norway, and he spent a year training on video games to prepare himself for his crime. The killer in Florida, he spent 15 hours a day on violent video games. The most all-consuming, all-pervasive thing in this guy's life are these violent video games. And less than a year ago, the American Psychological Association made a definitive statement. There is a clear, unequivocal link between violent video games, violent behavior. Their blood pressure goes up, their heart rate goes up, violent actions go up. The data is persistent and clear across many different forms. You cannot deny it. It is overwhelming.
Ben Shapiro, I know you're skeptical about a link from video games.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of people play these video games. I mean, girls aren't as into these video games, I'm sorry, as boys are, but I think if my sons had access to them, I'm sure they'd play them all the time, because something about the boy's brain and these games. But why are you not worried about it?
Well, I mean, I'm not supremely worried about it just because the consumption of these violent video games has been going up continuously since the early 90s, and yet youth violence has been going down since the early 90s. The correlation actually doesn't fit. As far as individual instances, I mean, you can find patterns in very sporadic instances among virtually all data sets, but there's some pretty mixed data about this. It's true that the American Psychological Association recommends that parents not allow their kids to play these games. I wouldn't let my kids play these games because I think they're immoral, frankly, but that should really be up to parents. I'm not sure the government should be in the business of stepping in. In 2011, Justice Scalia, in a majority decision 5-4, found that it was actually unconstitutional for the state of California to regulate the capacity of parents to be able to get these video games for their kids, or even for kids to get them themselves without parental permission. He saw that as a content violation under the First Amendment.
So I found it kind of very interesting, Ben Shapiro's thoughts on this. What do you think?
I agree with him.
Yeah. I would totally agree with him as well.
Yeah. If I was in his position as a parent, I wouldn't want my kids playing those games either. But I wouldn't want the government telling me that my kids shouldn't play these games or be taught certain things or be called certain pronouns.
I totally agree. I totally, absolutely agree. I think once the government kind of steps in and is like, now we're going to teach you everything moral, and we're going to, be the depository of what you can and cannot do, then I think that's just leading us down a bad road.
I think the ratings are helpful. I think those should be in place so that people can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
And then it's up to you what you do.
For sure. And logically think about it. Like here he's literally saying, listen, I wouldn't let my kids play that. Why? Because they're highly immoral, right? Think about what the action is of the video game and make a decision based on that. That's what I would suggest. Listen to what 3 John 11 says. Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God.
Wow.
That's kind of interesting, right? None of us have seen God.
Yeah.
But how do we actually see God with our eyes? By doing what he's asking, right? Loving each other. And when we do things that are evil, that obviously is well, then we don't understand what God is asking for us.
Yeah.
But I also think it's very interesting, don't imitate what is evil.
Yeah, he even called it a murder simulation, imitation, simulation.
Right, if you're imitating those things that are evil, then the Bible has some pretty clear evidence on what that means. And literally, if you're drawn to those kind of things and you like that and that's fun for you, then perhaps you don't have a complete understanding of what God is asking for us to do, especially in a Christian perspective.
I guess that's kind of difficult. The good question is, what is the purpose of playing this particular game? Because telling that to someone in the military, I would see why it's purposeful for them to play certain simulations or certain games. But if you're sitting at home in your living room on your couch and you're playing these things and taking pleasure in it, what's your motive?
That's right. Yeah. Good point. Good point. I mean, obviously, you go into the military, they need to teach you how to operate a weapon, and you need to be able to learn how to react, otherwise you will die very quickly out there. So for sure, definitely in context, the motive behind it is going to change. So how much time do you think people spend playing video games is also what I would like to ask. Do you think it's okay to play a sort of a non-violent, fun video game, but you just play it for hours? Let's just break this open. What about Minecraft?
Yeah, like Farmville.
You ever played Minecraft?
No. Yeah, actually. No. I didn't get too deep into it, though. Man, I don't know. It goes back to, it depends on the situation. I mean, if you're coming home from school and you're playing Minecraft and you sit there and you play it until it's time for bed, didn't do homework, didn't interact with your family, and this goes for adults too, of course, and I really consider what you're doing. Yeah. But I would want my doctor to sit down and play the simulation for until they got it correct before operating on me, for sure. So it depends on the situation.
Yeah. I don't really necessarily, I think there needs to be a distinction between a good video game and a bad video game. I do not actually believe that just because it is an electronic game that somehow that's made it evil. Like, I think that Wii Tennis is a great time to spend with your friends and play a game with them, and Wii bowling and whatever. Like, if that's the kind of activity you have fun with your friends, I see nothing necessarily wrong with that. But if you literally, like you said, play Wii Tennis every day, now all of a sudden you're not doing homework, you're not getting these things done, that becomes the problem.
Yeah, Fortnite, wasn't that on the news clip, they said it was the #4 reason for divorce.
Yeah.
Fortnite.
Yeah, an online divorce website says the popular video game Fortnite has been cited in more than 200 divorces just this year alone.
Yeah, wow. So then,
that's a problem.
Yeah, so then the amount of time then becomes an issue. Yeah. So here's some statistics of how much time people are actually spending. And this comes from Forbes magazine. So they're basically saying that 18 to 25 is spending on average 7 to 8 hours a week. Does that sound like high or low to you guys?
I mean, it's an hour a day.
I would have expected more, honestly.
I would have
This is across the board, right? So you're taking the people who spend all day versus people who spend no time at all, and you're kind of averaging it out?
Yeah.
Is that it?
I don't know how they're coming up with these statistics. 26 to 35 are spending 8.5 hours, so actually more. I find that kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You would think that video games are in between the 13 to 20 age range. You know, it's like you don't got very many responsibilities. You live at home. Your mom does your laundry.
Maybe
you're going to probably play more video games.
More social still, and these are like guys who are married with kids and
yeah,
like
we're
escaping
talking,
or something.
Yeah. 26 to 35 is our workforce, isn't it? I mean, these guys are the ones that are playing and putting the clock in the most hours playing video games. I found that kind of interesting. I found this kind of very interesting too. 60 plus are spending 5 hours a week playing video games. I mean, that's almost an hour a day. Yeah. Now you think about that. I mean, like 60 plus, you know, that's my parents' age, and you know, I just can't imagine my parents sitting there like, you know, gotta play my video game.
If they liked it when they were 30, I guess they still like it now. It's
You're right. And, you know, what is a video game? Is like solitaire, free cell.
Yeah,
right. That, you know, is that a video game? Because if it is, I could see that.
Virtual card game. That's true. That's true. That's true.
Whatever.
But look at this. I also want to point this point out. This survey was actually taken in 2018 as well as 2019. And what do you see?
Definitely increased.
You see an increase, right? So what is the population actually doing?
Playing more games.
Yeah. Playing more games. So this is why we're talking about this. This particular gentleman, he actually was a big video gamer, and he has just a little bit of personal advice. He's going to share a little testimony of his involvement with video games and how it actually really took a lot of his younger years away and what he does now.
Video game addiction is something that affects a lot of people, especially a lot of young people. It was something that really affected my life all throughout high school. In fact, to give you guys an idea, I used to spend literally from the moment that I woke up to the moment that I went to bed playing video games. I would play it all day, every day. I was totally immersed in it. There were a lot of days during school where I would skip school to go home and play video games. And for me, it was a way to escape. And I think that's ultimately what I realized that pushed me over the edge to want to make the change and get away from it. Because the reality was, in my life at the time when I was in high school, I wasn't a popular kid. I didn't have very many friends. I was very shy. I was very insecure. And as a result of that, I would get picked on. You know, I'd get bullied from time to time. I moved high schools quite a bit. And oftentimes when you're a weak target and you don't defend yourself, then, you know, people will attack you even more because they know that you're not going to fight back. And they just kind of see you as a target to elevate themselves, to elevate their own status and make themselves look cool. So for me, I was very unhappy with my life. I was very depressed. And so I used video games to escape, because video games is a different world. It's a different universe where you can be whoever you want to be. It's like you can start from scratch. You can create your own persona. You can become very good at it, and you can meet your needs from significance. You can meet your needs through connection and meet friends and feel like you're important and unique and you're somebody. And that's what it was for the case for me, because I felt like a nobody in high school. I was insignificant to everybody else, but online, you know, because I spent so much time doing it, you know, I was the best. I remember certain games that I played where I literally was the best. Like, I was the guy that people looked up to. I was like, you know, I take out everybody, and I was a part of different teams and whatnot, and I was very skilled, so I felt very confident, and I was meeting my needs in totally different ways. And so I was kind of living these two different worlds. There was real life, and then there was this fantasy world of online that didn't really exist, but it was just an illusion. And it was very detrimental for me, and it can be very negative to a lot of people, because for me, what it was doing, it was forcing me to escape the reality, the truth of my life. And instead of confronting my life, the problems and the depression and the issues that I had, I didn't face it. I would just kind of distract myself. And as a result of that, I would become more antisocial, right? Because the more time you play video games, it's a very antisocial thing. You're just in front of the computer all day. It was disconnecting me from real people, friendships. It was just also a waste of time when I look at it as well, because I looked at the years that I spent playing video games in high school. I look back and I'm like, man, what do I have to show for that? I got nothing to show for that. I spent so much time, and my high school years is just a blur. It's like, you know, at the end of your life, or 10 or 20 years, you're not going to remember these little video games and these little adventures and stuff that you went on that were so cool at the time. You're not building anything of any value. And I often think, man, if I spent that time, instead of playing video games, I actually spent it improving my body or my emotions or self-development or building a business, man, I would be like worth tens of millions of dollars today if I had started that process. And the amount of time that I spent doing that and just replaced it with self-development.
Okay, anything you guys noticed about this?
Nice place.
Nice place. He doesn't look like he's hurting for work at this point.
No, he's good at it.
Because he changed his life around.
Just talking about how much time he wasted just playing a video game, pushing a bunch of buttons. When you die, you're never gonna look back and be like, man, I had the highest score, you know? What could you have done with all that time in the real world, you know?
What I thought about what he said, he brought up some really interesting points that kind of really made me think about when we get to heaven. I don't think anybody is gonna get to heaven and be like, I'm so glad I played 50 hours of GTA, right? I don't know, you might have, you like that. No, okay, just kidding. But you know, I think that the regret that we're gonna feel when we get to heaven is, why didn't I spend my time doing something like better with my time? Winning souls or being more involved in my church or whatever. And it's like, I think some of these things at its core level, it robs us of the precious time that we have here on this planet. Do you guys think it's possible to become addicted to video games?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's proven.
Okay, so there's a lot of people that will argue with you on this, but I'm just gonna play you a couple of video clips here. You can make a decision.
The World Health Organization officially designated gaming disorder as a mental health condition.
Yes, the World Health Organization claiming video games are addictive, on the same page as alcohol and gambling.
We're on your side tonight learning more about how this disorder could actually impact you and your family. We're talking mainly, I think, about your kids. Joining us now is Dr. John Kuffner, a psychiatrist from Peninsula Behavioral Health. You know, obviously sitting in front of your TV, doctor, playing video games isn't as dangerous as nicotine, alcohol, but what are some of the side effects, or negative effects, I should say, about sitting in front of that TV for hours? I know if I let my kids do it, they would do it for hours.
It is potentially that dangerous. A couple of years ago, I read about some young adult, some 20-year-old, something that died after getting blood clots in his legs after playing for like 48 hours straight. So it actually can kill you. So it can be that dangerous, and it can be that disruptive to your life. Like, it can interfere with your ability to work or maintain relationships, stay in a relationship, or to supervise your children. I've seen kids that are unsupervised because young parents are gaming. Like, so yes, it can be as disruptive as all those other things.
Now, what questions can you ask yourself to see if you may be addicted to video games?
So there's a difference between like an obsession and being addicted. So when we talk about addiction, we're talking about this has gone so far, it's interfered with everything in your life. So it somehow interferes with your ability to work or maintain relationships. Once those things are breaking down, because you're prioritizing the game, because you're having some sort of withdrawal in between playing where you can't even be present in the moment because you have to get back to this other virtual world, and that's where your obsession lives, then that's when it's an addiction and a problem.
Well, how much responsibility falls on the parents? Because as a parent, with my kids wanting to play the game, especially Fortnite, like most kids out there, I tell my son he has to stop playing. And if he doesn't, I take the controller away. I mean, again, how much of this falls on the parent to actually play a role in this?
Almost 100%. And I have a kid that plays Fortnite too, so I'll tell you, I have this discussion in the office all the time. I have to tell teenagers, I see the worst fights over a parent trying to take away a phone, a game console, access to a computer. And the kid says, she can't take my phone, he can't take my video game console. You have to establish from the beginning, those things are owned by the parents. They're not yours.
Yes,
there's no mine.
Do you tell your kids that?
There's no mine. I allow you to use it, and you can use it as much as I allow you to use it, and when you go beyond that, I pull it back, and if you go beyond one too many times, we get it out of the house. So 100% of that has to be controlled by the parents because it's their property. It is not the kids. The kid does not have my cell phone, my game console, my game.
He's bringing up a couple of really good, I think, points here. Is it's like we need to establish from the very beginning, because I hear about this a lot as well. Going around and speaking, parents come up to us, wow, my kid, it's like he's totally into this video game system and I can't pull him away from it, what should I do? The parent has to remember, it's your system. You are the parent, you make the rules, and when that line gets crossed, there's consequences to that line. You need to feel okay with doing that with your kids, and your kids need to be aware of that.
Yeah, there's a tricky spot for parents too, though, and that is the best scenario is you start when they're young to not, develop that addiction. But if they're older, let's say your kid's like 16, 17, by the time they hit that age, if they're already gone that far, and now you're asking yourself, man, maybe I shouldn't let them play video games, and what do I do? Yeah. Like in a year or two, they're gone.
Yeah. Yep.
And now you're in a position to where if you drop the hammer, you're probably going to ruin your relationship and your influence along with it. And then they're going to rebel, and they're going to hate you, and they're not going to listen to you.
It's true.
So at that point, it's like a different plan, right? Should you still have rules? Is it still your house? Yes. But you're dealing with it from a different dynamic, and you need to, first of all, make sure that they know that you love them and that you want what's best with them. And you need to spend more time probably educating them than trying to take everything away.
Very true.
Because it's not going to create the scenario you want. So.
Very true.
I 100% agree. Of course, this is not like a friendship situation. It's a parent and a child.
That's right.
But I think the parent being as open as possible will really speak volumes to the kid. I know that from my perspective, for sure. And maybe even sliding an apology in there, like, listen, I'm sorry that, I didn't see this earlier. I didn't come to you with this earlier, but this is the time right now, and this is the information that I've been presented, and this is what's going to be implemented from now on.
Absolutely.
And pray about it, and hopefully, it goes smooth.
Very true. It's very true. And like any addiction, just taking it away is not necessarily the answer. You have to replace that with something. So I think the big thing for me that I drew out of this was really to recognize somebody that their normal life duties take a back seat, and this then becomes the #1 priority in your life. That is a classic sign of an addiction.
Yeah, sure.
And so if you're questioning, anybody that's watching, you're questioning whether my child is addicted or not, do they, get their normal life things done? Kids have to do homework. Kids have to clean their room. Kids have to do normal chores and things that make them responsible for life. If all of those take a back seat and gaming is the #1 thing, your child might be addicted.
Yeah, sure.
And if you're Christian, you have other things. There should be time set aside for prayer and Bible study, devotional time, family time in those aspects as well. So it's not just the normal everyday stuff. There's other things too that could be replaced. And if those are set aside for games, well, we can see what's winning out.
You bring up a really good point. I mean, we are to be preparing our hearts for Christ's second coming, right?
Absolutely.
And if we are literally sitting, running around going, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time for this, but we find time for all of these distractions in life, then you really have to question at the end of the day, I mean, that's a really good point. where you spend your time, where your heart is, there your treasure will be also.
There are people who spend lots of money on things that would be considered their vices or addictions, and then they need help with the necessities like food and other things, and it's like, well, you know, what's winning out here? You know, if we shift where our priorities are, you would have plenty of money
to take care of yourself. Yeah.
Good point, good point. Listen to what the Bible says about our time. Look carefully then how you walk, not as the unwise, but as the wise, making the best use of time, because the days are evil.
Yeah, this is super interesting, because now it's not just putting this into the context of, you know, is it okay to play a video game or not? Yeah, there are plenty of good games that could probably teach you something. Now it's adding a different factor because of the time that we live in. So even something that could be good, you have to sit there and evaluate, is this the best use of my time because of the time that we live in? Yeah. So, you know, and if it is, fair enough, it is. You know, if cut the rope helps you concentrate all day long and you absolutely need that, you see these improvements and you're playing it for 5 minutes or something, okay, you know. But if there's other things, you know, you can do to help concentrate, you know, and it comes between that and maybe something else. Like if it comes between that and your Bible study, then, you know, the days are evil. Better to put what's, you know, the Word of God in your mind than maybe play that game.
I like how the Bible equates this to don't be unwise.
Yeah, don't be unwise.
Be wise. You know, wise people learned how to use their time. You sit down and you read any of those entrepreneurial magazines or, you know, how did this guy become a billionaire? They knew what to do with their time. They did not waste idle moments doing things that literally profit you nothing. And that's what I think is the most interesting thing with the whole video game world. I mean, it is like B.F. Skinner, right? It's like pushing the little lever. Ooh, I got 560,000 points. Yeah. What does that do for you?
Just triggering dopamine.
Yeah. It literally does nothing for you. So, you know, think about that. Where do you use your time? I want to leave you with this one last verse. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light, says Romans 13:12. What is the armor of God?
We got the helmet of salvation. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, who's the salvation?
Christ.
Jesus.
That's right. You've got the belt of truth. Who's the definition of truth?
Jesus.
That's Jesus. You know, you got the gospel of peace. That's like the shoes, the Prince of Peace. That's Jesus. All of the elements that are for the armor is literally learning how to put on Christ. And I bring that up because I want to, like, you know, it sounds very simple and basic, but if you're sitting there playing a video game and you can imagine like playing that video game with Jesus, or you've put on Jesus and you're running around, would you be killing people and dancing over their dead bodies? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're putting on Christ, then we would not be doing these works of darkness. Yeah. I hope you guys had a blessed time watching this LED live. We've got a lot more of these shows. Once again, I want to remind you, thank you so much for those of you that have jumped on and supported us through Patreon. You are the reason we are able to do what we are doing, and we want to thank you guys so much. If you haven't jumped on and seen what we got with Patreon, I suggest you do so. We've got some really cool perks. You get some behind-the-scenes stuff. Also, check out our videos that we have on our website, littlelightstudios.tv. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so when we drop new videos, you guys will be the first to get notified that that new video is coming out. We want to thank you guys so much for watching our videos, and if you have any suggestions, obviously leave them in the comments below, and we will catch you next Friday.
Hey guys, please don't forget to stop by schoolforprophets.tv. This is where you can find the first 15 minutes of From America to Babylon. You can stream it now for a donation of $1.99, and the donation is going to go towards the next film, Babylon the Great Whore.